Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to Friday Live with Gladiator Consulting. My name is Rachel D'Souza. I am our founder and president. And y'all, this week has been a year. And I am very glad to begin to close it out with one of my favorite humans, who's too far away from me, honestly. But I get to see him because next week we will be together at both the Community Centric Fundraising Family Reunion, which is taking place on Saturday, April 25th. And we get to be on a panel together at AFP ICON on Sunday, April 26th at 9 a.m. in the morning, happily. How to prepare for the fundraising evolution / revolution. So very excited to be joined today by my friend Frank Velásquez Jr., the founder of The Hood, creator of Ascending Leaders in Color, and someone who is just so generous with his wisdom as it relates to building authentic relationships and building power through storytelling. So, Frank, welcome. How are you today?
Well, what a lovely introduction, first of all. I mean, I've got chills. So I'm feeling, it's Friday. I'm tired,
Yeah.
but it's a good day. Like this is, as Ice Cube would say, this we're off to a good day. I love it.
Yes. Yeah. Awesome. So as I just said, you and I get to finally connect. You're in Arizona. I'm here in St. Louis, Missouri. But next week we'll be in San Diego together. Talk to me a little bit about why we need community right now. Why does it feel important to gather in person in this moment?
Well, outside of the obvious reasons, just again, the climate of the country right now. And I just think it's really important, but even more so, I feel like on a micro level,
Yeah.
just those one-on-one conversations and one-on-one meetings. I'm excited to see you in person. It's been a minute,
Yeah.
so I think that is my intention
Mhm.
of gathering. It's not just these big gatherings, but
Yeah.
then reducing them down to like one-on-ones or small groups.
Mhm.
That's where I feel most, that's how I feel most connected to people, because it just feels just intimate. So
Yeah.
that's what I feel the moment needs right now, some intimacy and some love and care.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that so much. I it has been wonderful to be able to maintain, connections with folks outside of my sort of proximate area, using social media, using, all kinds of different digital tools. And it's honestly not the same as being in person. As you know, in a different part of my life, I am running for public office in Missouri.
Whoop,
And
whoop.
one of the, yeah, is it woo or like, whatever. But, one of the things that I've been doing is, I'm out canvassing, I'm knocking doors, I'm connecting with neighbors. And it's just been such a wonderful reminder to know that, what the algorithm is showing us, how we see people interact online, it's not the same as being face to face, as breathing the same air. And it gives us the opportunity, I think, as you said, to sort of connect differently, connect more deeply.
Yeah.
What are you sort of hoping to take away from these connections next week?
Oh, the way I approach, especially if it's with new people,
Mhm.
the way I approach it is I hope that, and I've seen it happen. I'm going to give one example. So her name is Nikki Brown. I got to talk to her at the San Diego Foundation conference way back in September. And somehow we've just built this connection. She asked me to co-present with her at AFP ICON. So I will be doing that, I believe, on Monday.
Awesome.
And then I made a drive up to Phoenix last week. We had a call that was scheduled for half an hour, and we ended up talking the whole drive. And you're talking like an hour and 45-minute drive. And so that's kind of a microcosm of what I would love at AFP ICON and at
Yeah.
CCF, is just connect with somebody And then I don't know, just see where it goes from there, and build off of that, and really see how we can help each other, not just business wise, but just as friends. And so that's my goal, is to meet some new folks, reconnect with the ones I love and care about, like, which would include you,
Yeah.
and then maybe have 2 or 3 more new connections.
Sure. Awesome. No, I appreciate that. So, and I'm looking forward to it as well. So, you and I have talked about relationships over the years. I think in our work in the nonprofit space, we often find ourselves getting, sort of sucked into networking receptions. And I often, I get home and I've scanned all these, digital business cards on my phone, or, I pull out of my purse just things I've, sort of thrown in there. And I'm looking at these and I'm like, okay, yes, I remember this person, that person. But, how do you authentically and meaningfully sort of move from that space of, okay, I've connected, we've found some sort of shared ground, into a meaningful and I think also mutual sort of relationship with folks?
Well, I kind of have a cheat code, and I'm going to start by saying that I'm an extroverted introvert. So even the older I get, I lean more into my introversion.
Okay.
And so the cheat code is that if I present, people come to me. So after the session's done, oh, Frank, I saw you on so and so. So that usually is very comforting for me.
Okay.
And then I start with just a few base questions. Well, tell me a little bit about yourself. Any person I meet, tell me as much or as little as you want, professional, personal, however you want to do it. And so for me, that's the goal, is just find some key individuals, and because I will get easily overwhelmed if I'm in a space, the noise, all of that stuff just does something to my brain. And so I much prefer, my cheat code is that having people come to me, or they catch me in a quiet space, or I catch them, so that's how I approach it. I really try to look at it from that lens of like, okay, just plant the seed. So let's say you do have a lot of people that you're going to run into.
Yeah.
Plant the seed, grab their card, try to remember specifics about them, and then make sure that you're scheduling a one-on-one meeting with them, whether it's virtual or in person, very soon after, maybe the week after. That tends to be my game plan when I go into these situations.
Okay. So to flip that a little bit, what happens, and I mean, I think you and I are in the same space. We speak at different events on the things, where we find ourselves to be subject matter experts. And so, I enjoy the opportunity to connect with folks on LinkedIn, or, grab a cup of coffee in the context of the conference. What happens if I'm a first timer in a new space? What happens if I'm, I remember, actually, I was chuckling. Icon is in San Diego. My very first Icon that I went to as a baby fundraiser was back, I think, in 2013, 2012, was also in San Diego, And so it's like you get there and there's so much to learn and so much to do and so many opportunities. Like, how do you, as maybe someone newer in the game, figure out how to make those meaningful connections?
I'm going to give a perfect example. And this is what I would say to any first timer at any conference, maybe a particularly large one. I met you at AFP Lead. I knew nobody, and my session had not occurred yet. And I don't know, I was wandering. I don't know how you saw me, but I don't even think we really knew each other. And you said, oh, just come to my table.
So
and I was like,
funny. What? I'm actually going to bump you. We actually met at Ray's in Nashville, like 6 weeks before AFP Lead.
Okay, so then that's what got my attention.
We did not. We had met each other in passing, and I moderated a panel at that conference with our mutual colleague Deanna.
Oh yes.
And so I saw you at Lead, which was then in St. Louis that year. And I was like, it's Frank. I met him, just a few months ago. And but I did pull you in.
But you're right. You are correct.
Like just one little in passing touch point that had happened.
Yes. And what I loved, and you are correct. That is exactly, you're right. That's how I knew her. How did I know her? Well, you brought me to your table.
Yeah.
I ended up making friends with a lot of the people at the table where we're still connected.
Yeah.
And I want to say 90% of the people at that table went to my session. And it was like, so that was such love and support. So any new person coming in, step out of that discomfort, land, and you'll be surprised at what might happen after that.
Yeah, for sure. Any don't do this tips, any what not to do for our folks that are going to be in person next week?
I would say don't go in looking for a sell or don't
Mm-hmm.
make it feel transactional. Really lean in with your curiosity. That tends to work for me, where I'm like, yeah, maybe business shows up somewhere in the future, but really use that as an opportunity to just connect with somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. All right. So we are going to be on a panel together.
Yes.
It is called How to Prepare for the Fundraising, in parentheses R, right? Revolution/evolution. So when we say that, what do you mean by that? What do we mean when we talk about evolution and revolution in this space?
I think it's connected to the conversations we have.
Mhm.
So what I'm doing at CCF is called How to Have the Donor Conversation We've Been Afraid to Have. To
Okay.
me, that's the revolution, is where we're moving into a space where it's much more collaborative.
Yep.
It's not siloed as much, where we're truly looking for partners and
Mhm.
collaborations, but it all starts with those conversations. So
Yeah.
to me, that revolution is to step out of that comfort zone, really lean in to how we're talking to donors,
Yeah.
because I think we can move beyond transactions when we're talking to donors, and it gets really into transformational giving. So like unrestricted giving,
Yeah.
volunteering, so
Yeah.
it's not just their treasure, it's their time and their talent.
Yeah.
And then I think between clients and nonprofits, I feel like we're also moving into this new space, and I'll be brief about it, but
Yeah.
but storytelling, and I know Deanna is a really big
Mhm.
practitioner of ethical consent.
Mhm.
What I am finding myself now in spaces for 2026 is
Yeah.
that I'm being asked to help the client themselves
Mhm.
tell their story in their words, on their terms, with their full agency. So they're the actual speaker. And that's been really cool to kind of see. I'm working with a local organization, well, statewide organization in Arizona,
Okay.
helping people with the lived experience of food insecurity tell
Wow.
their stories to elected officials, like hopefully with you in the future.
Yeah, no, that's, incredible. And I think, there just seems to be in the sector, obviously, we know there's been a lot of change and things that have been true, things that have been foundational. These are the policies we're accountable. This is the way things work. Those systems are being sort of, in some ways, bulldozed. In other ways, it's kind of death by a thousand paper cuts. And so I think a lot of fundraisers out here are wondering, now what? Like, if I can't rely on these practices that we use to cultivate and solicit and steward, then what? And, on our end here, as we're in conversation with our clients who are sort of going through this transition themselves, we really have found ourselves leveraging the non-ask meeting,
Mhm.
right? Yes, do we want that, contact that prospect to be a donor? Of course, at some point we do. And there are a lot of factors, there are a lot of changing circumstances around us, and we sort of have to be willing to be in a deeper relationship, have more authentic conversation. And I think that makes some fundraisers feel really nervous. So what kinds of I think mindset shifts are you finding work in sort of helping folks sort of bridge the uncertainty and really sort of get into that transformational space with their donors?
Great question. I think with individual donors, it's just simply how you approach the conversation.
Mhm.
So a lot of it is just like I said earlier, when I meet somebody new, I'm going to ask them, tell me as much or as little as you'd like about your, how you got here. That opens a lot of doors in regards to what they say, what they like, what they love, what they are passionate about. And you can also start building your own connections through that, and not in a manipulative way, but
Sure.
really in a relational way. So often, if I hear somebody bring up something about Disney, I might say, and which is a true story, it's like, oh, I used to work at Disney World. And then that just opens up people's eyes, and they're like, oh, really? And it just moves this conversation away from that transaction, is like, I'm here to ask you for $10,000 for this.
Yeah.
It could end up being something $50,000 for really, if you're passionate about this, this is exactly what we do, and this is how we would invest it, and blah blah blah, and so on and so forth. So it's just, to me, it's all around that conversation. Is that,
Yeah.
and so that's why I have that session at the family reunion, is
Yeah.
because I want people to feel comfortable
Yeah.
starting to have these types of conversations.
Yeah.
So that's where I see the keys. It's not some grandiose thing, and yes, I'm not going to lie that sometimes it's scary, because as you and I know, most donors are of a certain race, and sometimes there's that power dynamic that has been established
Yeah.
for decades.
Yeah.
So I understand that. So it's a very, it's a way to kind of move in through the side doors of
Yeah.
having a conversation and really dignifying even yourself, especially if you're a fundraiser of color.
Yeah. Well, and I just think it helps to be curious. Any assumptions that we've made,
Yes.
they might not no longer hold up. They might not apply. I remember years ago when I was baby fundraiser working for an organization long before Gladiator. We were having an event, and I was trying to cultivate some of the folks in our community, to come to the event. And one of the people that I had spoken with, said, "Oh, we got a new puppy, and we're planning these camps, and just we feels like a lot, and I don't think we can really budget for tickets at this point." And as the director of development, I had my little pot of comp tickets, and I was like, what, these folks volunteer so much with this organization, like I want you to be there, and I don't want costs to be prohibitive to why you're not going to attend. So have this conversation, find out about things going on in their lives, wind up offering, a ticket to her and her spouse to come. And then at the event, they made their first major donation to the organization during our paddle raise. And I sort of remember thinking to myself, like, oh my gosh, like in 6 weeks beforehand, this person had felt really, really sort of stressed out about different commitments they'd made and different expenditures they had, and really felt like they could not at that moment, give in a way that would allow them to participate. But by me understanding what their circumstances were and celebrating other ways in which they supported the community, it created a space for them to then actually be able to do that. And Frank, I always think about that situation that we never know. We never know if we're not curious. We never know how we're going to be able to connect resources to our organizations if we don't do things that might be a little out of our comfort zone or out of the norm, or, I remember someone used to say, delight and surprise people in our conversation.
Well, you're hitting on a keyword, curious, curiosity. I think when we lean into curiosity, when we lead with curiosity, all of these other lovely events come out, and it feels genuine. It really does.
It really does. Okay, so tell us a little bit more about this ICON panel. Who are we going to be hearing from? What do you think people are going to learn in that space?
Well, as we just gave the hint to, it's about conversations and how we change the direction on how we talk and whatnot. So it's going to be obviously you and I, and then the lovely Hannah Berger, who's out of LA, and then Yuri Costco, who is also out of LA. So I sense it's going to be very interactive. We planned it that way. It's not your normal panel discussion. I think each of us gets to be a moderator at a section. We're going to have a few polls out there. But the main thing is we're going to do some reflection as the panelists, and then we're going to have the audience get involved, through the audience polls, maybe do their own individual reflections. And I think at the end, it's really just, again, a space for people to feel comfortable to where we're headed, and that they have a network of support of people to help them get there. Because whether we want to believe it or not, it is shifting. Fundraising is shifting. It is moving. It is moving quickly. The demographics of donors are also shifting. So we need to prepare for that as well.
Awesome. Yes. Okay. So everyone's invited. Please, if you are in San Diego and you're attending ICON, we will be presenting at 9 a.m. local time. And again, the name of our session is, where did I lose
I
it.
think it's how to prepare for the fundraising revolution.
Thank you. Appreciate. Great teamwork. So yes, please add that to your agenda. Check us off in the app, whatever, you need to do. So
I love that it's day one, and in the morning, it's like, I feel like we're kicking it off.
Yes. And I will say, I need to acknowledge that I think we're going head to head with my colleague, Tim San Antonio, who is doing a presentation on the Fundraising Effectiveness Project. You can bounce back and forth. You can take the opportunity to learn from multiple sources, okay? Because Tim is also brilliant, and we want to support our peers in this work. But yeah, I think it's going to be a great morning for us. So in, naming the other people on the panel, I think it's really important to highlight that we've put together a learning experience that is led by 4 people of color, in a space that, historically and honestly presently is still, very, very white dominant. You have in your personal life, in your professional work, in your volunteer time, have continued to be a person who chooses to create spaces for leaders of color, for people who are aspiring leaders of color to show up authentically, and joyfully. What kinds of connections? What do you want other folks of color to sort of feel and experience as we're in these professional spaces?
Well, I think first and foremost, I don't want people to feel, especially people of color, to feel alone, to feel, because I'll back up. Largely, these conferences, if they have a higher price point, it does effectively, limit the diversity of that particular conference. And so you're going to immediately notice, how it feels like in that space.
Right.
So I think it's really important to support, to find, to connect, because there are things as people of color that we experience that other folks just don't, and it's no hate, no harm. But what I will say is that, well, I guess there's harm, but not direct harm. The harm is really just, we've had to limit ourselves. We've had to dim our light. We've had to do all of these things to fit in. And in that expectation to fit in, we still get dropped first. We still get cut loose first. So we know these things about each other. Right. And so finding that connection, finding that joy, is really what I love. And there's another conference I go to, and I've always done like a people of color dinner, and the refreshing feeling when people come into that space and thank me and say, Frank, thank you so much for this, because I was feeling kind of alone. And then they stay connected through the rest of the conference. So I encourage people of color who are attending AFP ICON to find your people. I know they have an app. I don't know how effective it is, but if you see somebody who's a person of color, just reach out, jump into that space, because they're probably looking for you too.
And they usually, I was going to say, they typically have a set of receptions, and so they're, everyone likes to go to the pack reception because it has good snacks. But there is a idea reception. There are typically other spaces in which people can connect. I know that Jennifer Lee Dotson with Advancement Northwest up in Seattle, they always put together something that is very inclusive as well. I think this year it has.
And she's going to be at CCF, is right?
He is also going to be at CCF. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah. Okay. So how can, since we're talking about relationships, how can people find you, connect with you? Like how can people, get, connected?
Well, I think I'm okay to do this because I have it on my website. I'm just going to give you my number. The easiest way to get to me is by text.
Okay.
702-300-8827. If you're in San Diego at either event or both events and we haven't directly met, text me. I would love to connect with you. As I said earlier, my goal is really to meet some new people and hopefully find some new connections. It'd be really exciting. Obviously, the other way to find me is forthehood.com. That's the number 4, DAHOOD.com. You can connect with me there. And those are the 2 biggest ways. But really, shoot me a text. Let's see if we can connect. I'll be there from the 23rd through the 28th. and have some gaps in there for sure to for connection.
Awesome. And if we have people that are not comfortable texting you, do you have an email address that you want to
Yes,
drop also?
it'll be Frank
Mhm.
at forthehood.com. Again, that's fordahood.com.
Awesome. Perfect. All right, friends. So I think, what we're hearing right now is that we need community. We need to start thinking about our relationships with each other and with our communities a little bit differently. And that starts with us and being curious. So for the folks that are, going to be at the reunion, going to be at Icon, or, who are just out there right now, trying to connect, trying to learn, is there any piece of advice or encouragement that you want to give?
I think just the fact that they're not alone. I think it's really important that they know that they have their peeps are out there. I think the goal is to find them. And I feel like genuine connections are what we need right now. So yeah, you're not alone. You're not alone.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So, like I said, we will be at the Community Centric Fundraising Family Reunion on Saturday, April 25th at Good Life Resorts. And then Frank and I will be together on Sunday morning for preparing for the fundraising revolution. That'll be again Sunday, April 26th, 9 a.m. at Icon. And we look forward to seeing y'all there. So, I hope to send you into a restful and joyful and hopefully sunny spring weekend. And we will see you all soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.